They can make the art of watching paint dry sound great.
It's very easy to fall into the trap of believing that they're thinking, believing that they're intelligent, and they're not.
Right. If you don't even understand how LLM works, you're never going to get the most out of these tools.
Morning, Peter.
Good morning, David. How are you today on this wonderful Monday morning?
That was a cheerful good morning. You must have had a good night's sleep on Sunday night.
No, quite the opposite, actually. I didn't but a good night's sleep last night. I don't know why I'm awake. This will end in about an hour.
All right. Well, we better talk fast while you still have enough energy, and while I have coffee to drink, and we're all good. So you sent me a really interesting article the other day. It was I thought it was neat. It was about AI work slop, and it's kind of funny because there was a lot of talk a few months ago about AI slop in general, but work slop has a little bit of a different connotation to it. So tell me, let's talk about like who published it, what is it, and then let's jump into talking about what it really means, if we agree or don't agree with it.
No, I think that's good. So, first, welcome everybody. And I have to point out, I'm wearing a warm shirt and you're wearing your Hawaiian shirt. So anyway, we know we're now in the fall, but I have to comment on it anyway.
It is always summer in my mind.
Yeah, me too. I wish I was someplace where it was always summer. Anyway, yeah, the article. So I like you, we are constantly looking at all the current thinking that's out there. And, look, we read a million different things, a million different either magazines, online magazines, whatever it may be. We talk to a lot of people. I always make part of my reading process Harvard Business Review and also the McKinsey thinking on artificial intelligence, because they're kind of at a front line on a lot of this stuff. So I stumbled upon an article that was called, AI generated work slop. It is destroying productivity. And I thought, kind of this is, it works into the theme of everything that we're speaking about. And then some of the other research that's been coming out where 95% of the projects are failing and companies aren't seeing an uptick in productivity and all that other stuff. It's a typical wave of new technology, and you kind of get to the peak and all of a sudden people realize its limitations before they really figure it out. So I thought it was a great article for you and I to comment on. And I think moreover, just really look at it, the positive aspect and, how do you as the organization think about these things so you don't kind of fall into this, this rut?
Okay, so for people who haven't read the article, it's in Harvard Business Review. It came out within the last, I think, 10 days. I think it was maybe the 25th of September.
Yeah. Let's just call it work slop is a really fancy term for poor work that individuals are using to generate, work that's definitely substandard, that actually, in fact, creates more work from the recipient rather than making things go a lot easier. So it might make the producer of that work more efficient in the sense that they're getting something out the door a lot faster. But because of the poor quality of the work, the recipient then has to basically redo all the work all over again, creating a tax on effectively a tax on the organization.
Yeah, I found it interesting that one of the aspects of work slop. So, generically, yes, it's AI slop by another name, which is people sort of mindlessly, thoughtlessly regurgitating whatever they get from AI and not being too diligent about it. But the thing I thought was interesting was they did talk about that aspect you just mentioned of sort of the downstream impact, which is, if you're my boss and you ask me for a analysis of something and I just do a quick and dirty lazy man's ChatGPT prompt or Gemini prompt or pick your model prompt. I give it to you. And now instead of, maybe it's even worse than if I say, well, geez, Peter, I don't have time to do it because now I've given you a 10 or 12 page document that might be utter junk. And you have to read that 10 or 12 page document. And then you have to probably throw it out and rewrite it or spend even more time trying to improve it or whatever it is you have to do, right?
Right, exactly. And I think, the insidious nature of work slop is that it looks really good. It sounds really good until you dive into it. And that's really the killer.
So that's a great point. It looks and sounds good. It's it's going to be moderately well written. It's although depending on what you're doing, it may be obvious it was written by AI or it may not, but it will be grammatically correct. It'll be structured well. It'll be, if it's PowerPoint slides or something, they'll look fairly professional. So yeah, it is a little bit sneaky because you might have to spend some time with it before you realize that it's slop, not real work.
Right, exactly. And then it also, there's the perception issue that it creates. From the recipient standpoint, if we get quote unquote work slop from somebody that works for us, you start looking at the person in a negative light. All of a sudden, your perception of their capabilities drops because the implications are, well, if they're just going to, send over the slop to me, uh, it's not only is it consuming my time, but they're not going to spend the time to do the work right. So, what are you doing? It's like the recipient could have done this just as quick themselves. Instead, they're getting this sloppy effort that looks polished. The person that you view the person that sent it to you, you diminish your perception of their capabilities.
It's funny because, so first of all, let me ask you: do you think this is AI's fault or is it a people problem?
Oh, it's a people problem, 100% a people problem. And yeah, you and I have spoken about this a million times. It's totally a people problem.
It's like you've often used the analogy on this podcast: a fool with the tools, still a fool, right? And so, um, although to be honest, I think AI makes otherwise sane, rational people into fools because they get tricked into
Agreed.
this, right? They get tricked into thinking that they can just like that. There's a hack for life. Um, I this drives me crazy, and I'm gonna rant for a moment, but
Go crazy.
um, this whole hustle culture BS is really getting to me because what it is doing is it's sort of replacing the idea that the quality of your work product matters with the idea of just crank out lots of stuff. And you see this in all realms of work and life and everything else. But I see it a lot in people talking about, AI runs my business for me, right? Like I subscribe to a whole bunch of different newsletters.
Right.
I am so tired of seeing these articles from people who are like, I automated my entire business with AI. And they're talking about how like they use AI to find 5 good things to write about this week. Then they use AI to write the articles. Then they use AI to post them in 39 different places. And just reading their process, they're not doing any work. They're not adding any value. And
No.
the work that they're releasing is junk. And if you write on Medium about how you automate your business, I'm talking about you, right? There are
Right.
hundreds of you out there writing all these Substack and Medium articles, and they're creating the idea that somehow AI has made it so we don't have to lift a finger other than to, you know, a few mouse clicks and it's gonna like do all our work for us.
It's magic. It's all
All
magic.
right. My rant is over, but I see this as an extension. Actually, I see this
So,
as a direct outcome of people paying attention to these hustle culture AI fraudsters.
and they're all over the place. Well, so let me continue your rant for a minute because it drives me insane too. Not only do you see all this hustle culture and all these articles popping up by these, we'll call them 20 somethings, who, feel like they have to work 24/7, exclude everything in life but work. Like they have their laptop and nothing else, and they have AI and laptop and they can build companies and can build these
But they
billion
still
dollar companies.
find time for lots of selfies.
Yeah, now they're efficient at selfie generation. That's amazing to me
Yes.
how fast they can do that. But I want to swing back to the corporate world for a second because, again, this is a topic that you and I have focused on a million times. And I blame a lot of the corporate culture and just the corporate approach to technology. They put things like Copilot or ChatGPT out there, and they give it to their entire staff and say, "We're done. We've given AI to our entire staff, and okay, we're going to move on to the next problem." And then they wonder why they get crap. And they've done
Hold
zero
that.
training.
I want to come back to that. That is a huge point, and I have a major bone with this article, with one aspect of this article. I like the article. Let's come back to that. Keep going, but I want to also circle back to that.
Yeah, no, I'm almost done with my rant. But it drives me insane that an organization thinks that's a solution. That is how you deploy a tool. Zero training, zero. How do you make this efficient? Zero, and then they wonder why they get no productivity gains out of it. It's the whole measuring AI activity versus impact. Activity is not a good proxy for productivity or impact on the organization. So because you gave ChatGPT to 10,000 employees and 8,000 of them are using, that does not mean you had an 80% success rate and all of a sudden you're going to see 80% increase in efficiency. It's not. Again, I will go back to my favorite term. A fool with the tool is still a fool, and you're giving a very powerful tool to a lot of fools.
So it's interesting because you just hit something that I have seen in real life over the last couple of months, which is companies that roll out these tools. Yes, they give the tool to people without enough training. That's a problem. But more troubling to me is that they're measuring outcomes by how much time or how frequently people are using these tools. And you and I've heard people like they say, "Oh, I use AI for everything I do," or "I use AI 10 times a day." I have a confession to make. There are some days I use AI not at all. There are some days I use it heavily. And I like to think that's because I have learned to be discriminating about what kind of task I'm going to use it for. And this idea of, oh, I use it all day long and I use it for everything, I think that's a little bit toxic. I think it
Maybe.
tricks people into using it when they shouldn't, or at least not thinking about, is this the right place to use AI? And if so, how should I use it?
Right. No, I 100% agree with you. Um, Again, I think people start, it's much like the web when the web first came out, and it's all this. Well, I don't need to do research; I can just use the web because I don't need to remember things because I have the web available, and all this cognitive offloading goes on. But I think we're taking it to the next level now. You're offloading all this cognitive capability to a model, and you're not thinking about what's coming out. You're not thinking about what you're putting in. You're not thinking about how you're asking the model. You're not doing any of the critical things that you should be doing as a normal part of a cognitive process. Like if you're doing research, like what does that entail? How would you really do that? Look, there are days I use AI for, looking for a recipe, and it's great. But like you, plenty of days I just don't use it. I don't want to check my brain. My brain is, I hate to say, I only have one of them. I want to keep using it. It's a muscle. It needs to be flexed constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, that cognitive offloading is a scary thing, right? Like, where would we
Yes,
be if we lost our smartphones today? Do you remember anybody's phone number?
I
Um,
know. And I used to remember everybody's phone number.
right, right. That was it. In the days before smartphones, I knew everybody's phone number, or at least,
Yep.
the 10 or 12 people I called on a regular basis. Of course, I don't call anyone now anyway, so maybe it
Nobody
doesn't
does
matter.
anymore. Right, exactly. Yeah, but you think about it though. I mean, look, I go back to those days when, my ability to something simple like that, my ability to remember phone numbers or just long strings of numbers was fantastic. I can remember pi out to like 50 digits. That was my thing. And these days I can't remember anybody's phone number other than my own and a couple of other people, luckily. But my ability to remember strings of numbers has just decreased because your brain, you're not. It's again, I go. The brain is a muscle. You don't use it, you'll lose it. You start losing capabilities, and it's much like knowing the names of streets. I live in this town for 30 years. There are streets I still don't know the names of.
I know all the streets in Manhattan, mostly because they're
That's easy.
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot easier.
And I can count. So, no.
But what does it say for big organizations? They're offloading all this stuff to ChatGPT and OpenAI.
Yeah. So it's funny because I think it comes back to basic human nature, right? Like, let's face it, we are two sides of the coin. One side is we're efficient, right? And what's the old saying? Necessity is the motherhood of invention. We are trying to solve problems. But the flip side of that coin about efficiency is we are also sometimes inherently lazy. And
Yes,
again, those are really two sides of the same dynamic. But we're lazy, and sometimes that means we use tools when we should just use our muscles, or that we trust um, our, we trust tools to do things for us, or AI models to do things for us that we should be reviewing and doing manually. So I think this
right.
work slop is maybe another expression of, human human fallibility, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Human fallibility, like you said, human laziness. Or, I think some of it's just a side effect of the amount of work that we're pushing on people, and they're looking for a shortcut to accomplish as much as they could and get as much done as quickly as possible. I think the expectations for people have gone up. I mean, the amount of work you're to produce has gone up quite dramatically. And I think any sane individual is going to go, oh, if I have a shortcut, I'm taking that shortcut.
So, but on the human laziness topic, right? Yes, we do want to take shortcuts, but we've been trained not to take every shortcut available to us, right? Like, we
Right,
live in a world today where if I wanted to, I could plop myself down on my sofa. I could have all my devices around me. I could never get up. I wouldn't have to leave the house. I could have
right,
all my groceries and meals delivered. I could have everything I need delivered. I could have most
right.
of my meetings by virtual. Like, I could get no exercise. I could never cook a meal for myself. I could never leave the house. That's the height of laziness. But I
Yes.
don't. Right. And the reason I don't is because despite how cool it looked when the Jetsons portrayed it 50 years ago, um, I've been educated by our society to realize that that is actually bad for me. Right. That
Right.
that's unhealthy.
Right. Right. And it is.
So,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, so basically it comes full circle to what you said about providing tools with no education and training about pitfalls and how to use them and things like that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I think, you and I still see most organizations falling down this trap or this rabbit hole of just let's give them tools. Let's give them because, give them the tools and efficiencies are going to come. And to me, that's just scary because it's not like you're handing somebody a power drill to go, drill a screw faster or, drill a hole faster. You're giving them incredibly powerful tools and you're not training them on them. You're not giving them the necessary background. And in many cases, they don't even have the core skills to actually do this. And that's what's scary to me. So, the article itself actually applied. They called it it was a hidden tax on organizations, which it certainly was. And they applied a number to it. And I honestly thought the number was arguably way too low. Like they
Yeah,
said,
I agree.
I laughed at it. I'm like, you kidding me? That's not even an hour's worth of work for most people. I would have argued honestly 100 times that number. I think it would have been probably closer to reality. Um, but they said, again, if you get an intern working for you and they give you, poor work, that now is time you have to spend educating the intern to not do that again, to do it better, to up their game, to proofread it, to all that stuff. So that's a cost on your time. Your time is expensive. And now you have much more of that coming at you because they're generating so much more of it all of a sudden. So it's not work that's valuable. It's basically crappy work.
So have you had work slot passed off to you? And if it's from me, please don't say that on the podcast. I'll deny it.
Have I had work so passed off to me? I'm 100% sure I have. Absolutely. It's you're going to get it. I mean, and look, I hate to say I don't want to pick on younger generation. I think they're more apt to do it because it's a shortcut and they're more used to these tools. But I want to take a lesson. So I want to take a lesson from social media, and we see how much damage it's done now. If we're smart, and okay, so we've gone through social media. We understand the implications of what it does to the human brain, how much damage it can do, and a whole bunch of other issues. And not that it's an exact corollary, but we should now say, okay, fine, we learned a lot from social media and there's other breakthroughs. How do we apply that to AI and using it efficiently in an organization and using it smart so that we do get the gains that we want? And we do see something greater than 95% fail rate, which is a whole other set of problems in approaching to artificial intelligence. And I see most orgs falling down the same rabbit hole all over again.
Yeah, it's hard, right? And I say that as a defining characteristic, not a complaint. It's hard, meaning it takes work, it takes effort to roll out these tools, to learn to use them effectively. And I think we have been, everyone's looking for the easy button. And here's the crazy part. And you and I've talked about this before. I can have a tool that takes me many, many hours to learn to use effectively and takes me a lot of thought and I have to sort of concentrate while I'm using it. Right. But if it saves me
Yeah,
30, 40% of my time, I'd be crazy not to use it. And yet we see
100%.
people going, just because it's not the easy button, I can mindlessly click the button, it's a failure. They aren't
Yes.
willing to put in work. Like you'll work hard, but you'll get a 30 or 40% productivity, maybe
Which is a huge
10%
gain.
even would be, yeah.
That's a
And yet
massive
people
gain.
are so demanding and maybe so used to having technological miracles performed on their behalf that they don't want to use it unless it literally is brainless. Click the easy button and I don't have to do any work.
And they get so aggravated when AI spits out something that's wrong and they're called out on it. And I'm like, wait, this is completely obvious that you're never going to get 100% accuracy from the current state of the models. I mean, seriously, if you haven't double checked your work a million times over, yeah, it made it easy for you. It did a lot of good work for you. But again, you got to use your brain. And it shocks me that so many individuals are so lazy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is it's a combination of laziness, which I 100% agree is a big factor, and it's lack of awareness,
Right.
right? Like you just people don't know what the tools know and don't know. And so, like, simple example, if I am asking, if someone says, hey, come up with a strategy for how we want to launch this product that we're launching, and I, work slop it, I just ask AI in the simplest possible way, I need a strategy for launching my new widget.
Right.
I'm going to get the most generic, non-company specific, non-product specific answer possible.
Mhm.
And I'm going to get the exact same answer that 10,000 other people just like me might have gotten that same week.
Right.
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 So, how is that going to be valuable and unique? And if that's what someone asked wants, why would they have asked me to do it? Why wouldn't they do that themselves? I mean, that's right. But I think people don't. It's the problem is these tools are good enough as what you and I've described before as mimicking human language and behavior, that it's very easy to fall into the trap of believing that they're thinking, believing that they're intelligent, and they're
Right.
not.
Right. No, exactly. And a lot of people who use them and feel it's like it ups their game and they're now sound intelligent, though absolutely nothing has changed. I had a thought. I lost a thought actually. And I hate when it happens. I had a good thought over here I wanted to riff on. But again, I guess so much of this goes back to, oh, I know what I was going to say. So,
Oh, good.
so much of, yeah, it came back to me. Okay. It's morning yet. I'm not fully awake yet. I remember bad night's sleep. So much of this is just expressing what I call just regular human nature. It's not like any of this. If you sat down and looked at it in retrospect, with the benefit of hindsight, you could say, oh, yeah, that's human nature. That's just human nature. We know that's what people are going to do. And yet we still fall into the same trap. The organizations still fall in the exact same trap. And then they complain why they spend all this money and they're not getting any results. Yet they fell right into the trap, which was completely self evident that was going to happen.
Self-inflicted wounds, right? It's
Absolutely.
the story of human history. And I just want to
Right.
clarify, Peter, I was not giving you negative feedback when you said that. Apparently, my gesture control on my Apple is turned back on. So when I inadvertently
Oh,
make
I
hand
didn't even see
gestures,
it.
while you were saying that, I looked up and I was giving you a thumbs down gesture.
Oh, I
Thanks,
didn't even
Apple,
see
for
that.
that.
See,
Yeah,
this is bad AI.
right. Exactly. Dangerous.
Very
Um,
dangerous.
so
Now, what that deserved negative feedback anyway, what I was saying. No, I'm only kidding.
so it is human nature, and I think I want to get in a couple of minutes to how do you fix this problem, right? But let's talk about two things here. One
Yes.
is what is work slop? Work slop is not just because you used AI, right? It's
No.
because you used it poorly or inefficiently or with a degree of laziness. And so I think it's really important for us to call out that using AI does not automatically generate work slop. And we
No.
should not equate use of AI with poor results.
No.
It's how you use it, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely correct. Yes.
so I had an example that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was working with a team, and someone said, okay, we need to come up with a plan for this event, right? Great. We need a plan for this event. Now it was a series of events, and we wanted to plan it out, and it was very unique to the setting we were doing it in, to the company, etc. And within 2 minutes, someone pasted a 2.5 or 3 page plan into a group chat, and I was irritated. I empathize with what the HBR
Right.
article describes as like the resentment that builds downstream, because I was like, well, first of all, this seems like a little bit of an attention grabbing move. Like, hey, look how fast I am. In 2 minutes, I've come up with a 2.5 page plan. And then I was irritated because it took me, I don't know, a few minutes to read that. And I wish I had those few minutes of my life back because it was generic and useless.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if that person had spent a minute jotting down 3 bullet points into the group chat of things they were thinking about that might have been relevant, that would have
Yeah.
been more useful to me. 3 bullet points of original thought would have been great, right? And I could have read them in 5 seconds, not 2.5 pages of slop that took me several minutes to read that added no value to my day. So, and now if we had collectively each thrown in a few bullet points and then said to an AI model, hey, here's some information about the event. Here's some of our thoughts. Organize these into a little bit more structured format so we can refine it. That would have been huge value,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it would have
Exactly.
taken no time to do it. Everyone chips in 3 or 4 bullet points. Doesn't matter if they're redundant, whatever. You just throw them all in and someone pastes them into chat and writes a prompt and you get back some value add. So that was a long example, but I really just wanted to say, just for anyone who's not clear on this, we're not saying that using AI to help you with tasks that you're given at work is work slop. We're not saying that using AI to help you with tasks that you're given at work is bad or lazy. We're saying it's how you use it and what you do with it that makes the difference.
Right, right. Training, training, and training. So the article had actually interesting terminology for folks like that. And it was pilots versus passenger framework, where the pilots are much more likely to use AI effectively. It's a bigger part of their work. They generally tend to be much more optimistic. They have a higher agency, but they're much more thoughtful about how they actually use artificial intelligence to augment their work as opposed to just, like in your case, generating a lot of noise, which is of no value. It's the old quantity versus quality argument. I can generate all the quantity and pass it off as quality when in fact it's total crap. And then they had the passengers who are, it becomes a tool or a crutch. It gives gives them the perception that they're actually being intelligent when in reality they're really not. And, it does nothing for them, and they're less likely to use artificial intelligence outside of their regular jobs, where a passenger will use it very often outside of their regular jobs. It's just something for them. It's much more of an augmentation tool to enhance their creativity, enhance their capabilities, much like you were saying, as opposed to just replacing everything with, oh, I'm going to generate an AI prompt that's one line. It's going to give me 2 pages of stuff, which is of no value.
And I did like the passenger versus pilot analogy, and clearly you can't have everyone be a pilot on a plane, but
Right.
I think in a sense everyone should be striving to be more in control of what AI is doing and how they're using it, not like you said, along for the ride. Hey, I'll throw in a quick and dirty prompt and I'll just accept what it gives me, and now I'm a
Right.
passenger. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. And then it went on to talk a little bit more about, and then I want to jump to, you had a list of solutions that I thought were fantastic.
But I also had the big bone I wanted to pick with the article. But
Oh, go pick the bone, go for it.
yes. Okay, here's my bone to pick with the article. And I'm sensitive to this because I see this get tossed around as clickbait everywhere, which is
Yeah.
these absurd statistics about the incredibly high percentage of AI initiatives that have no measurable or very little measurable return on investment.
Hmm.
And you sort of foreshadow, not sort of, you did foreshadow this a few minutes ago in this conversation, but it is bad expectation setting, because 2 things happen. Number one, companies roll out AI as a personal productivity tool to their workforce, and they just expect magic to happen. They
Yep.
don't provide them training. They don't provide them frameworks. They don't provide them ongoing support and mentoring and learning opportunities. They give it to them just like, hey, we upgraded our paper supplier. Here's a couple of reams of this new shiny paper, and we're
Yes.
done, right? Here's some new pencils, great. I already know how to use a
I
pencil.
love
You gave
that.
me a better one. I'm happy.
I love
Like,
that.
it's insane.
It is
And
insane.
and yet that's what they do, right? Like, where else would you see this? If I were working on a factory floor and the boss came in and said, hey, guess what? We're rolling out a whole bunch of robots. Here they are. And they dropped them off in the loading dock and said, good luck, guys. See you later. And I'll be looking forward to the massive increases in productivity across the factory floor.
I love that analogy.
Like, what am
So
I going to
spot
do with a
on.
robot, right? Like, I'm going to play
So,
games with it. I'm going to do some stupid robot tricks in the beginning. And then I'm going to, like, I don't know, make it sweep up after me when I drop something. Right. But you haven't trained me to think about how to integrate a robot into my manufacturing process. So what am I going to do? Right. But this is what
no, I agree.
hundreds or thousands of companies are currently doing. They're handing off powerful tools to people with no owner's manual, with no training.
No. None. Nothing. Zippo. Nada. I have yet to encounter a firm where they have had a formalized training program and they got people up to speed. It was no, here's ChatGPT, go crazy. Learn how to problem, learn to do it yourself, and you get results that are all, of course, no surprise, you're going to get results that are all over the place. There's no consistency in output, there's no consistency in query, like you said, no frameworks, nothing. I love your analogy. That's a perfect analogy. Just drop the
Just
robots on the
came to
floor and
me.
say, go.
Um, but here's the even crazier part. Even if you do all these things, even if you provide training, guide work, support, frameworks, right, all the things we talked about, you're not going to see massive ROI. That's not the reason you do it, and that's not how you get massive ROI. The massive ROI, and that is a real opportunity, it doesn't come from rolling out personal productivity tools. It comes from embedded AI. It comes from putting AI into automated
Yes.
business processes, into applications, into
Yes.
complex scenarios, not
Right.
giving it to a bunch of people to use as an assistant,
Right.
right?
Right.
I
Couldn't have
mean,
said it better.
did we get better productivity when email was rolled out, or Lotus Notes before that, or you name it before that?
No,
Arguably, no. We got busier,
we got busy and we did work faster, but I don't say, yeah, if anything, we did more. Yeah, everything you're saying is 100%
right?
correct.
But another analogy. So, yeah, I roll out email and people get busier and they can communicate a little bit faster with people outside the company as well as within. Okay, great. But what really drove productivity or financial gains for retailers was web storefronts, e-commerce. That was
Yes.
real. It's we're talking about the same analogy here. I give a tool to people and I get a little bit of a bump, but I embed that tool, in this case, electronic communications and transactions, into my website so people can purchase from me real time, and I get massive benefits, not just from volume of purchasing. I get global reach. I get better metrics about what people are looking for. I get fully automated end-to-end procure to pay processes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? It's the same with AI. Give someone a tool and they're amused for a while and they might be a little bit more efficient, but they're not going to get real productivity benefits. Build that tool into the way your company operates. Now we're talking.
Yes. No, I couldn't agree with you more. You articulated it perfectly. I think you're absolutely spot on correct. And
So,
I,
if any journalists are listening, the next time you are tempted to write about 90%, 93%, pick a number, of companies are not getting measurable returns on their AI initiatives, just stop. Stop and think about what you're saying and stop and qualify that. They're not getting returns
yes,
on a low value activity that they're funding.
right.
They're not even doing the work to try to get the real returns.
Oh, you and I know most firms have not moved up the food chain yet. They're still using ChatGPT for their people. They're not gotten past that. There are very few organizations that have actually looked at real artificial intelligence projects to enhance their internal processes and get some real big gains. You haven't seen that yet. Very little. I mean, I'm not. I know what's going on. It's just very little, and that's what gets written about in the press. Is that's not what you see. It's all the personal productivity stuff, and none of this is a surprise.
So, and we can talk someday. Maybe we'll do an episode on sort of the, 8 or 9 different, like you can slice them any number of ways, but I'll say 8 or 9 different forms of embedding AI into your business. Product tools, personal productivity tools is one tiny slice of that pie.
Exactly, very tiny slice of the pie. And most firms, and again, you and I predicted this a long time ago when we first got involved in all this, and we said you're missing the key point over here. You're not looking at your real hard problems. You're not looking at the stuff that's really going to drive a lot of value. Everybody wants to do around a periphery and expect it to be easy. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk every day and I'm going to walk, a quarter of a mile and then I'm going to go run a marathon tomorrow. And that's kind of the mentality they all got. I'm going to do easy stuff and then magic is going to occur. And, it's just, I feel like it's a generational thing too. It's like, we like easy because we don't want to do the hard stuff, which really gives us a massive amount of value. And that's really what you have to do if you want to get the real value at AI over here. And that drives me insane when you talk to people. They think it's going to be easy, and look, anything good is going to be it's going to take work.
Yeah. Yeah. And just because it takes work doesn't mean it's not still going to be tremendously valuable to you. It just means you're going to have to earn it.
Exactly. I want to pivot for a second because this is a little bit closer to my near and dear heart, having played with a lot of these. Because this whole these issues really affect, I think, two things a lot. They affect professional services firms, i.e., us, or firms like us, or the technology sector, where the advent of some of the AI development tools is going bonkers. Everybody's grasping onto them because they do provide real value and they add a lot. And again, going back to, if you're smart about how you use these tools, you can get real value. The problem is most people are not smart about how they're using the tools. And you can't you have to still be a developer or a software engineer to get real value out of these tools. Otherwise, what you get is a lot of code that's been generated that a lot of it's junk. And especially if it goes back to you don't know how to prompt it, you don't know how to use it, all that stuff. And you have to be smart about how you use it. And with that, you can get tremendous productivity gains. You have to be smart. You have to be trained. You just don't give a developer a tool and say, "Okay, fine, you're a junior developer, great. I'm going to give you this powerful AI tool. I want you to go write a brand new high transaction system and go crazy. I want it done in a week."
Yeah, I think it comes back to human nature, right? We want things to be easier than they really are, and we throw little human temper tantrums sometimes when we require that a tool, still powerful, requires some training and work to deploy effectively. We're like, well, I wish it were just easier.
Right. No, no, absolutely. I do want to get to your tips because I think they're important. But one
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
one
Let's talk about those.
I
Go
also
ahead.
about to do, yeah. So we kind of touched on it during the talk ourselves. Writing a really, really, really good detailed prompt is always incredibly important, and understanding what you're trying to accomplish and what you want to get out of the model in order to augment your thinking process. Like I think, generally speaking, you need to go into anything with a kind of an idea of what you want to do, and then go, right, articulate it clearly to the prompt and get it, tell it what you wanted to do.
100% agree. When we were writing down, like, okay, what do you do as an individual worker in an organization? How do you make sure that you're not generating work slop and that you're using it effectively? Number one on the list was a good detailed prompt. And look, we're not turning this into a lesson in prompting because that's a whole topic of its own. But like, to your point, start with a clear description. What are you looking for? What kind of content do you want? What format do you want it in? Who's the audience? How long do you want it to be? Um, people people have been maybe conditioned to think that they don't need to put as much effort into a good prompt as I think they do. And I always feel like if the prompt doesn't feel like a real pain in the butt to write, it's probably not a very good prompt. Right?
Right. I
Like
think
it's work.
it's a lot of work. Like I think the whole school of, well, I'm going to write a one-line prompt and magic occurs. It's just so wrong. And you don't know like long prompts are good. Like, and this is like my style tends to be, and I actually think I got it from you. And I love the transcription tools out there. Like I will speak into one of the transcription tools because I just find it easier than typing, and I have more free-form conscious thought. And I will speak into a transcription tool. I will take the transcription and I'll use that as my prompt because it's a lot of information I put into it, and that helps me, go a lot faster.
Yep. Yep. I do that all the time because, I'm trying to lower the friction of creating a good prompt. And if I can just
Exactly.
talk at length about what I want, and sometimes I'll even use an AI model to then take my raw transcript and organize it a little better. And then I'll use that as a prompt. But yeah.
Right.
So I think we had 7 tips. Just, hey, I like lists. Let's do a list. Number one was write a good detailed prompt. It's probably the most important one, right?
That's probably the most important one. Yeah. I think the other one, don't prioritize form over function. Yes, that's
Number two,
absolutely
don't, yeah,
critical.
form over function.
Or
So,
then three, write your
well,
own
talk
first
talk
draft.
about what form over function means, right? Like what do we mean by that?
Having a prompt that is pleasing and nice and well formed, I think to me is not super important. It's really what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you have to think about how a language model works, and I think that's important. They're statistical engines, so any information you put into the prompt is going to help drive that statistical engine to get the output that you want. And the more information you give it, the better output you're going to get.
Right. And also it's also, I think, form over function in the output. Like some people place too much emphasis on how beautifully written or how long and detailed the output is or how well designed it is, and they're not paying enough attention to the actual content. Right. So
Right.
and And these models are really good at making everything look great, including utter junk.
Oh, I'm sorry. They can make the art of watching paint dry sound great. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah.
you got to be smart.
Now you've just inspired me. I'm going to go ask when we're done for a haiku about watching paint dry. And I bet it will be interesting.
I
Um,
think you should do that now so you can read it before the end of the podcast.
all right, Peter, we're gonna do this live right now.
I like
Um,
that. So while you do that, I'll continue on with the list a little bit more. I
yeah.
think it's all important. I think and there's one or two I think that probably should
Ooh,
be on
ooh,
here
this
that
is a
we spoke.
good one.
Oh, speak about it, please. Go right ahead.
So I just violated my own rules and I wrote a simple one-line prompt. I just said, write me a haiku about watching paint dry. And in this case, I used the GPT-5 model and it said, slow drip, pale and still. Time thickens, hue by hue spread. Patience learns to breathe.
That almost makes it sound exciting to watch paint
Right?
dry.
Like it looks like an art form watching paint dry. I mean, hey,
I love that.
right? But that's a great example of form over function. It's a bunch of
That's
meaningless words, but it it's a well structured haiku, and I could
it
turn that
is.
into my English professor, and yeah, that wouldn't go
Yeah,
well, would it?
I
All right.
probably not, but I do love it. It's actually pretty fascinating that it was that good.
Uh,
So, anyway,
who knew? So let's go to number three on the list. You were starting that when I interrupted you with my thrilling paint haiku.
oh, I love that stuff. Use AI as a QA step, which I think, and this is actually an important one. Or we skip maybe skip one. Anyway, bottom line is use AI to validate and check your work, make it better, augment your thinking. I think is a key thing here. You know, do the work yourself, but use AI to go back and check it, and it gives you just another a voice in what you're writing. Might be wrong, keep in mind, but that said, I think it's a really important step to follow. And I very often, will write a letter and say, please check this or grammatically tweak it, or if you see something I did wrong, please, feel free to correct it.
Yeah.
Always.
I do that a lot. I'll write something, longhand by hand and put it into AI and say, well, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's the audience. Here's like, blah, blah, blah. Does this work? And
Right.
it's good. It comes back sometimes that says, hey, if you're trying to convince someone to do something, you were a little bit passive in this. What if you made it more like, a stronger recommendation? Like, good
I use
point.
it as a writing partner. You know what? As a writing partner, it's actually not bad. It
No,
definitely,
it's great.
not that I agree with everything, but very often, because everything, look, I have my own style of writing, and, some of it's not any style guides and, whatever, but it's my style. It's not grammatically incorrect. It's just a different style, but it'll go, it'll try to tweak it and modify. It's fine. Don't like it, don't do it, whatever.
Okay. Okay.
But it's
E.
helpful.
Cummings.
Yes, exactly. Me Cummings. That's it. See if anybody okay, next one. Let's have a poem by E. Cummings written about paint drying.
Exactly.
All right. And this is a good one. I like the next one. Ask AI to anticipate questions and objections. It's a good way of validating whatever you're writing. I find that extraordinarily helpful. It's a good way of just doing a gut check on what you're putting out there. I find in many cases, especially go back to prompt, give it a lot of information so it knows what you're doing. It can be very good at asking you some really good, hard, thoughtful questions that you would have not anticipated, especially if you're making an argument for something.
So you just said something that I should have written down when I wrote that one because you mentioned the importance of a good prompt, right? A prompt that says, "Here's my PowerPoint deck. Tell me the questions and objections," is not going to give you much useful information. A prompt that says, "Here's the deck. Here's who I'm presenting it to. Here's their level of familiarity with the situation, et cetera, et cetera." Right? Give the prompt some details about what it is you're trying to accomplish, then say, what are some questions I might get, right? Because if I'm presenting something to a board of directors, I want to know what's a board member going to ask me about, not what a technical architect would ask me about. Um,
Right,
that one's also
exactly.
crazy because I find I've said this multiple times to people about like use it this way. And I see a lot of resistance. People don't want to have AI tell them what kinds of objections or questions they're going to get. And I think part of it is we've gotten so used to AI constantly like petting us and telling us we're brilliant
Very
that,
sycophantic.
yeah. And people are like uncomfortable with the idea of ask AI to point out flaws in your argument or weaknesses in your writing or something, because it's supposed to make me feel good. Why do I want to give me harsh
Wow.
feedback?
I will comment on generational aspects of that as well that don't like to be told. Maybe I won't touch that one in the podcast, but maybe I will. Look, I think criticism is something that is uh, extraordinarily valuable if used effectively, and I think there's certain generations, we won't name which one, that are very anti-criticism because it's against their grain and their feelings. But I didn't say
Yeah.
that.
No, you're right. It's call it criticism, call it constructive feedback, call it anything, but it's a necessary part of growth. We all know what happens when everyone's a
Right.
winner is, no one's a
Everyone's
winner.
loser. Right.
All right.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, but that's a great one. Don't forget using it to help you prepare for hard discussions. What are the questions? What are the objections? What are the
It makes you
what's the
prepared.
pushback I'm getting? Yeah,
It makes you
yeah,
prepared.
and
You know what? It's better to walk into a meeting prepared, knowing that you might get some questions. Just your response and your brain's ability to respond is just much easier because it's already like, it's as opposed to, look, a lot of people when they're under fire don't think particularly well very quickly. And if you have at least a thought process before you walk into the meeting, it becomes a lot easier. So it's a good
yeah,
thing, not a bad thing.
totally agree. The next one on the list is I think is a great one too. And this is, to be honest, this is maybe my number one personal use case when I'm talking about AI for my
Yeah.
personal productivity is I use it to structure and organize my notes or my content. So important distinction. I don't use it to generate content nearly as often as I use it to restructure and refine my content.
Right.
And one of the ways I do that, sometimes I give it written content, but a lot of what I do, as you said, is I'll open up an AI voice transcription app and I will just start blabbering about a topic. And what I like about it is I can just sort of say all the things I want to say about the topic without trying to simultaneously order them and structure them and make sure that I don't repeat myself. I just let myself create. I let myself talk. Now, I'm still thinking hard because I'm actually thinking about what I want to say. I'm just not thinking at the same time about how to organize it. And I let AI help me organize it, but it's my content.
Right. Right. No, 100%. No, I actually did something recently. I had to write a letter to a hotel, in fact. It was a long letter. I sat there. It took me a lot of thoughts. I wrote, spoke, wrote. Ultimately, a two-page, prompt I put into the thing, and I said, just organize it so it flows a little bit better. And then I went and I reiterated. Then I still went ahead and tweaked it myself, but saved me a ton of time. And having to write it just by hand.
I've never worked in the hospitality industry, but something tells me that when you receive a two-page letter from a customer, it's usually not a compliment.
It's not a happy letter.
Right, right. Happy notes, happy letters are short notes. Hey, thanks
Yeah.
for the great, da da da.
Those go on Google. Those go on Google reviews real
Right,
quick.
exactly. But that's I like that example because that's one where you could just blurt out what you were thinking, feeling, what your concerns were, etc., and then have AI help you clean it up later, right?
Right. And it was perfect for that. It did a good job on the first round. And again, not perfect, but good. And I went through and I tweaked it more and put more of it into my voice. But it was a good way of organizing the content. And it didn't add anything. It just took what I had and reorganized it. So,
You're sort of using it like a brainstorming partner, which it
yes.
occurs to me we do that with colleagues, with people anyway. Sometimes you're like, all right, let me just think this through, and you stand up and maybe you're at the if you're old school like me, maybe you're at the whiteboard or whatever, and you're sort of like you're trying to figure it out verbally, visually, vocally, all at the same time.
Right.
And I think AI can be very good at that. In fact, I will confess I've even used my iPhone to take a snapshot of a rough sketch of something and put that in along with verbal
Yeah.
thoughts and right and AI is actually pretty good at using those pictures that you draw of something.
No, it's great. It's great. Look, to me, it's in many cases, it's a partner. When I do design, when I do work, I use it as a partner to riff on, to get ideas from. For me, it's absolutely fantastic for that. Um, I never pass off its work as my work.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. Well, should we talk about the last one on the list, which is grounding?
And I want to add one more after that, only because
Good.
there's a slightly different perspective, or maybe one or two more after that.
Okay.
But yes,
Well,
and I
hey,
like
yeah,
this one because this is incredibly important. Like you have to ground it with real content, and I think that's what makes it much more specific to the problem that you're trying to solve. I will generally OpenAI and Claude, I think both support this with the concept of a project where I will put a lot of project information in there. And I'll give it a lot of documentation before I actually start, doing whatever it is that I want to do because it grounds it. It makes the LLM far more accurate. It narrows down the number of choices the LLM is going to have. So it makes it a lot better. I get better responses.
100%. I think that grounding, I almost flip it around and say, if you are expecting to generate content, not just restructure your own notes, but if you actually want to generate content, first question you should ask yourself is, am I expecting to generate this content based entirely on that pre-trained foundational model? Because if you are, stop. It's a
Right?
bad idea, right?
Yes.
If you are going to generate any form of content, your first question should be, okay, what am I giving it to start with?
Right.
Because if I'm just relying on the out of the box foundational model, it's probably a bad idea.
It's a very
And
bad
I'm sure someone could come up with examples where that's not a terrible idea, but I'm going to stick with my
idea.
generalization. It's a bad idea. Don't do it. Right.
It's a bad idea. I just generally think it's a bad idea. I always add content. I think it's just again, if I want to get the
Yeah.
responses that I want at the quality level that I want, then I'm going to add a lot of information to the model so I can get back, you know, much more relevant to what I'm working on.
And I think this is one of those examples. So we've had people ask us why, when we work with companies and we help them understand how to deploy and use AI, one of the things we push very hard is that there should be a cohort of people who are business leaders who actually
Right.
put some effort into understanding how AI models work internally, not at an incredibly detailed level, but they should get it.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons why, because if you understand what these models do and how they work, our comment about grounding will be really obvious to you.
100%.
If you don't understand how the models work, our comment about always ground with some additional content will sound arbitrary and, I
Yes.
don't know, rigid. Right.
So this dovetails onto the next couple of points that I wanted to make. And I think this is incredibly important. You're absolutely correct. We spoke about it, usage from the perspective of a user, but I want to talk about it from the perspective of an organization. And you're a CFO and you've just been given a bill and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you have to ask yourself a whole bunch of questions. As an organization, what do I need to do to get more out of these models and make them more effective and get real value out of it as opposed to spending a boatload of money every month and not knowing what I'm getting out of it?
Um, I mean, you've hit many times on the biggest one, which is education, training, and support for people.
Right. And I
Massive.
think I should say, if I'm an organization, I'm a CFO, CEO sitting there, or I'm a CEO going to my guys, I want AI. You got to be thoughtful about it. And it can't just be, well, I'm going to call up, OpenAI and say, I want 10,000 licenses. You have to be thoughtful about how you deploy this. You have to do it right. It has to be a measured approach. You have to come up with training programs. You have to train your folks. And you just said it yourself having a number of individuals in a firm or just the upper management understand how an LLM works is it's a big step towards getting the most out of these tools. If you don't even understand how LLM works, you're never going to get the most out of these tools.
Yeah, and it's funny because understanding how it works is such a tricky concept because to some degree they are black boxes that we will never understand the precise operations that any given prediction goes through, right? Like this,
Right,
we can't. But we can understand the principles by which they operate and we can understand what those principles mean in practical terms.
right,
So,
100%.
yeah.
It, so,
Um
go ahead, I'm
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I just think it's really important organizations are smart and prudent about this and have to ask yourself some really hard questions. Because if you don't do it right, you're in fact, I think, creating say negative feedback loop, but you're creating a whole bunch of issues that you now have to resolve that could have been resolved before you even deployed and made it a lot easier. And instead of starting, well, I'm going to give everybody a tool and they're going to go hit a wall and I'm not getting what I want. And then you have to fix those problems. Whereas you kind of take a step back for a second and say, okay, we're going to deploy. let's understand what we're doing here first. Let's have a thoughtful discussion about it. Let's educate people. Let's give them the right education and thinking process and whatever it is they need to get the most out of it. So we as a firm get the most out of it and not just, pray and spray. Let's throw it out there and hope everything goes well because it doesn't.
Yeah. I'm also going to say, couple that with the age old carrot and stick approach, which is, if the carrot is teaching them and giving them knowledge and skills, I think the stick approach is maybe it's a flexible soft stick. It doesn't have to be a very heavy stick, but the stick approach is create some guidelines or a policy if your organization's into
Right.
policies, but set down in writing your expectations and your rules, for lack of a better word, for what is an okay way to use AI and what is a not okay way. And I think that even the companies I've seen who have created policies around this, they don't go far enough because they talk about the black and white legal and privacy lines, but they don't talk about what is being a good colleague, right? And this idea of don't just generate content and pass it off as your own, right? It's not illegal to do that, but it's certainly bad. And you should absolutely have that in your policy that, what are the expectations about how you use these tools?
And you're right. I think, there will always be individuals do that. You need to call them out on that. However you do it, you need to do it. I think you need to be shamed into not doing things like that because, look, it benefits nobody. It doesn't benefit the org. It doesn't benefit the creator of the content. It doesn't benefit the recipient of the content. Just if you're going to do stuff like that, get called out on it. Like in Generation, I'm sorry, when I started out, if I did something stupid, I got called out on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but um, I wonder sometimes how, like, you and I probably both went through brutal code reviews. My first job out of college,
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
writing
God, yeah.
COBOL code, and it felt like like being a gladiator going into an arena full of lions some days
Oh,
because
yeah.
man, they were brutal. And people are like, why would you do it this way? And explain, how did you decide this over this? And what do you think? Why did you think that was a good idea? And or just like this will never work. And like it
Oh,
was it was rough.
it's funny you should say that because maybe I'd buried that in the old hole in my brain someplace. But having been on both sides of those things, they were never fun. I mean, you use the gladiator. I use it was a nasty proctology exam, and they were just not fun. I mean, both sides. I'm sorry, when I gave them two, they were never fun. I never liked doing them because you're asking questions and you're asking people how they think and to justify their decisions. And well, can you do it this other way or this way? And then you see this shortcoming, and maybe there's a better way to do this, or yada yada yada. And you took a shortcut here, and you know the implications of that, and over again. At the end of the day, it made you a better developer, both sides. But it was never fun.
And ironically, as we talked about earlier with the critiquing, AI is actually a pretty good code reviewer and other reviewer, right? So maybe you get spared the indignities of being insulted by your colleagues and you just get, criticized by AI, which happens in a closed environment and you don't have to worry about it. Um,
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. It makes it better, but then again, you have a generation that think the tools are going to do everything, and they don't have to actually understand how to code. I had an interesting conversation over the weekend, but with a developer, and the recognition that you have to actually go in and look at the code and really somehow refine it yourself because you're going to make better decisions than the tool will.
Right. Yeah. We should do a whole episode on the ins and outs of code generation because I think
We
there's a
should.
lot there. Um, so I think you mentioned the term intern earlier, and I think that a lot of our tips, if you want to call them that, or lessons we've learned on how to use AI tools at work, really boil down to the sort of trite, very overused but accurate phrase of treat AI like an intern, right? You wouldn't hand in an intern a large, important, high visibility assignment and let them go off with no guidance, no supervision, and then tell them to go ahead and email it to the whole company when they're done without you reading it, right? And yet we do that with AI all the time, right? Like it needs directions, oversight, validation along the way that it's on the right track.
Right.
So like
100%.
I think if you sort of stop thinking of AI as a genius and start thinking of it as an inexperienced intern with a really good memory.
Yeah, yeah. There seems to be this whole movement. A lot of managers, a lot of CEOs have this whole thought process. They're going to eliminate a lot of people with AI, and I think that's unfortunately the wrong mindset. And I think it's dangerous in many ways. And I'm sorry, but you want young people coming on board. You want interns coming on board. You want them helped by these tools. But again, you have to train them the right way to use these tools effectively. And you're not. You're not doing anything. You're giving them a tool and going go, and that just is dumb.
I'd like to think if we were smart about it, we could use AI to make people into super employees, right? In other words, have them spend less time on the low value parts of their jobs and learn to effectively delegate that to tools and use their brains for stuff that like you're unlocking their potential if you're doing it right.
I, there's nothing stopping an organization from doing that. It's a matter of doing it right and being cognizant of the capabilities of the tools and the individuals and making them work together. So you don't have just an individual with a tool. You have an individual who's now maybe twice their capabilities or three times because they have this powerful tool that they're working with, but they know how to use it really effectively.
So let's table up for debate on a future episode. Who should lead this? Because everything you just said was, I was like thinking about it as you said it, and I realized it's usually like the CIO that leads the rollout of these tools because they're provisioning the tools and there's really no one else overseeing it. So I think we should come back to the who should lead this. That would be a really interesting conversation to have. But
Yeah.
um, it's look, I think we've done a pretty good job of picking apart the article. I think we agree AI slop or work slop is a problem. I think the problem is not the tools, and it's not even the individual workers being lazy. You can't fault someone for being human. You can fault someone for running an organization full of humans and not expecting them to act like humans, right? Which is give them something and tell them it's the easy button. They're going to use it like an easy button. Give them something and tell them it's a tool that requires care and thought and proficiency to use, and they're going to use it that way. So honestly, if you're a senior leader who's made a decision to roll out these tools and you're unhappy with how it's going, I blame you. You've done it wrong. It's
Yes.
not the employees that are to blame. It's not the tools that are to blame. It's the fool who decided to roll out the tool with no training.
I could not agree more. You're absolutely correct. So let's blame the top because I think that's ultimately where the blame lies. You know,
Great. I just insulted our client base.
yeah, but you know what? And oh, look, I understand they drank the Kool-Aid. It's not hard to not drink the Kool-Aid. You have all these big tech firms coming in and promise you, nirvana. And they drank the Kool-Aid without asking the right questions. And not, in fairness, not maybe fully appreciating or understanding because the tech is moving fast and we're all learning about how to use it to the most. But you really got to step back and think about this. And
Business leaders have been fed a lot of Kool-Aid over the decades by the technology industry, right? I was
yes.
talking with somebody the other day about the massive gulp of Kool-Aid that was the entire ERP fiasco,
Oh
right?
my God, that was horrible. Yeah, I know. They all
Or
drank that and spent a fortune and they got a fraction of the benefits out of it.
and ultimately, not only did they spend way more than they got, they probably handicapped themselves in the process because they tied their
100%.
business models to these rigid software tools. They lost skills and knowledge in the process. Like it was like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, the original wave of large ERP systems were a disaster.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. They were absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And I remember when they came out and everybody was going towards them. Even in one of my last firms, they were deploying an ERP system and it was an epic disaster.
Yeah. So I guess the point there and the relevance to AI is look, I just slammed business leaders for being sort of thoughtless about the way they deploy AI. But I think the technology industry has to own their part of that, which is we're constantly coming up with new flavors of Kool-Aid to pour down
Yes.
the throats of business leaders who are looking for technology to solve their problems. So,
And
like,
that's right.
yeah,
No, go, please. It, I feel like we always forget the human aspect of all of this, and that's where we have all the issues. And one of my other sayings is, if it wasn't for humans, we'd be wildly successful at all these projects, but humans always get in the way.
we ruin everything.
We do. I don't think we do everything, but we certainly make it much more difficult on ourselves than we need to.
This is true. Well, Peter, another hour plus has flown by. Uh,
Yes.
it's been a fun conversation. Thank you for sharing that article with me too. As you can tell, a lot of emotions came up reading that. I was like, oh, I can't believe they're saying this, and like, of course, like
Of course. Yeah, no, it was a great conversation, as they always are. But I want to mention one other thing. And I know you and I have been working on this for a while, but with luck, we'll have a number of guests on some of the future podcasts. Some really, really good guests, I think, give us a different perspective and hear their perspective. Some of them a little deeper in the weeds and, working in organizations who have a different perspective than us. And we get to hear their voices as well. And I think it'll be super exciting.
yeah, we've got some. We've had some good guests, but we've got several more good guests teed up, and I think it'll be fun. So you don't have to listen to me and Peter debate the meaning of life all the time. You can listen to us interrogate someone else on the meaning of life.
Yes, exactly. We're going to do one of them in a real studio, I think.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Our first face-to-face podcast, like the big boys.
Yes, exactly. That's going to be cool. So I look forward
Yeah,
to that.
good.
All right,
All
David,
right.
again, thank you.
Thank.
Another great conversation.
Don't forget to call me Data.
Have a
All
great day,
right.
everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us over on YouTube. And make sure to stay up to date with us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well.